Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and welcome to Alpha and Omega Ministries. It is a true delight to have you with us today. So I always like to do a review of what we did last week because this is an ongoing story, right? So last week we had a double portion called Vayikra and He Called, and we went back and we looked at the major events that had brought us from Genesis 1:1 to the end of the book of Exodus, and they are breathtaking events. And we looked at the cyclical nature of history because it is very cyclical, and we specifically landed on Shinar, which turned into Babylon, of course, and we discovered that Babylon is the epitome of evil. First, we saw Shinar at the Tower of Babel, and that's where, of course, God confused the languages, and he scattered all of the people who had unified to come together to do evil. Now, that might ring a bell in everybody's mind because we see that unification of evil coming together in our day. So we saw that there was a recurring of Shinar as the name changed from Babel to Babylon. And we looked at even the Chaldeans refer to Babylon. That's another name of Babylon. And we saw that Babylon attempts to change people's identities. And so obviously we see that going on in our school systems today, everywhere, right? But we saw that because when Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego got to Babylon, they immediately changed their names from names that focused on God, which each one of them had, and they changed their names to names that focused on false gods. And it was really stunning. And even today we see this happening as identities are trying to be changed in the forms of pronouns, and we don't even need to go into that, but you all know what we're talking about. So we compared this with the educational systems, and so now Zechariah pops into the picture, and he had amazing things to say about Babylon because Babylon becomes the center of all commerce. And we see that commerce has become incredibly corrupt. And so again, we see another cycle of Babylon in the book of Revelation. And we see the depravity that has come into commerce. And we've talked about it here today before we even began. But there's so much depravity in the commerce systems today in the form of drugs, in the form of trafficking, and a lot of other hideous things that we could mention that people make money on, and that's all they care about is the money that's being made. They don't care about the lives that are being ruined. And so in the book of Revelation, Babylon is referred to as Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. That is what Babylon has become. So also in Revelation, we heard the great news that Babylon has fallen. And so we're going to see the day when Babylon no longer reigns in this earth of ours. But there was a warning for God's people, and his warning was, come out of her. Because so many people that look just like we do on the outside are up to here with the philosophies and the things that are going on in Babylon. We would never imagine what's really happening. So we've been warned. And so today we turn the page and we start a new book, which is Vayikra, which is going to become a word that is, I hope you will love the rest of your life, but it's the book of Leviticus. But before we get to the book of Leviticus, I want to go back to the last few verses of Exodus, because Exodus and Leviticus are tied together like this. So it's a continuing story that we have to connect. And we have to answer some questions, and we'll take a few little detours along the way. But what in the world are these people going to do that were terrified at the presence of God now that he lives right in their midst? This was this happened quickly in one day. And so what are they going to do? What's God going to do to fix this? And it's an amazing process that he goes through. So how is this going to work? So Exodus 40, 17 and 18 says, and did you all get notes, first of all? Everybody got notes? Okay, good. Exodus 14, 17 and 18, and it came to pass in the first month of the second year, on the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was raised up. So do you know that this actually happened on last Thursday? That was the day that the tabernacle would have been raised up, and Moses would have done that on that very day. And it was also the first day of Nisan, which is a hugely important month. So Exodus 40, 18 and 33, Moses raised up the tabernacle, fastened its sockets, set up its boards, put in its bars, and raised up its pillars. So Moses finished the work. Can you imagine? All of that work that had been done we've talked endlessly about the pillars and the caps on the pillars and all the hooks and every last detail, all the skins and everything that had gone into the work of that tabernacle. Moses put it together and raised it up. It had to be an amazing thing. The physical building itself would have been miraculous. They were in the wilderness. So that means they either brought all those materials with them out of Egypt, or God somehow miraculously showed them where they could be gotten. We aren't told. But all those materials came from somewhere. We can imagine the gold and the silver maybe, but how about all those bronze-covered pillars and all the trees? They were in the wilderness. There aren't lots of trees in the wilderness, right? So they had to get these materials from someplace. But that was just the beginning of the miracle. Now the Shekinah glory is going to actually dwell with these people. That's the real miracle. And the way they'd get this presence to remain with them is through repentance. That's how he's going to stay. So as long as they had repentant hearts, God's presence would remain and dwell among them. Exodus 40, 34 and 38. Then a cloud covered the tent of the congregation, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And Moses was not able to enter into the tent of the congregation because the cloud abode thereon, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. For the cloud of the Lord was upon the tabernacle by day, and fire was on it by night, in the sight of all of the house of Israel throughout all their journeys. So the glory that's described here is implied as an active and inescapable presence. Think about that. Those are huge words. Active and inescapable presence. You can't get away from it. He's invaded your territory, just like he's invaded our territory. Only from then it was out here, in. Now it's in here, out, right? But it's an active and inescapable. I love those words. So the word for glory is kavod. And of course, the word kavod means weight. There is an actual weight and heaviness to the glory of the Lord. And it's an amazing thing. Not only is there weight to it, there's honor, and there's distinguished characteristics. There's value, and there is just an awe-inspiring presence to this glory. And why? It's all there to evoke our praise. That's why God's glory comes among a people. He is deserving of praise. So I want you to see this weight in another verse, and it's in Exodus 17:12, and I think you'll find it amazing as I do. It says, "But Moses' hands became heavy." And if you read that in the Hebrew, it's Moses' hands became kavod. That's how real the weight of that glory is. Remember, Aaron and Hur had to hold his hands up. They were so heavy. That's the glory of the Lord. I thought that was incredible. So, where have we seen this glory before? In Exodus 24:17 it says, "Now the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a devouring fire on the top of the mountain in the sight of the people. And this was terrifying to the people. They wanted to run and hide. They said, Moses, you go talk to him, we're out of here," right? And 2 Chronicles 7:1-3 says, "Now when Solomon had finished praying, fire came down from heaven and consumed the burnt offering and the sacrifices, and the glory of the Lord filled the house. And the priests could not enter the house of the Lord because the glory of the Lord filled the Lord's house. All the sons of Israel, seeing the fire come down and the glory of the Lord upon the house, bowed down on the pavement with their faces to the ground, and they worshiped and gave praise to the Lord, saying, Certainly he is good. Certainly his faithfulness is everlasting." And isn't that amazing? They didn't speak of terror, or they didn't speak of the fright or even the weight that they felt. They had to feel it because it was heavy in that place. But they worshiped and praised. That's what the glory evoked from this group. And they recognized his goodness, and they recognized his faithfulness. And I love that. So just before Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the first temple, Ezekiel actually saw the glory, or kavod, leave the city of Jerusalem. Ezekiel 11:23 says, "And the glory of the Lord went up from the midst of the city and stood upon the mountain, which is on the east side of the city." So they saw, Ezekiel actually saw that glory stand up, leave the city. He couldn't stand the filth and the things that were going on in that city anymore. He was done. He was done with it. And that's a huge thing. And he literally saw the presence of the Lord standing over there. That's a big deal. So today, sorry, there is no temple. How is the glory of the God, shown in the world today? We find an answer to this beginning in Samuel's chastisement of King Saul. In 1 Samuel 15:22 it says, "Has the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed than the fat of rams. For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Because you have rejected the word of the Lord, he has also rejected you from being king." Thank you. We see God's desire. Thank you. Thank you so much. We see God's desire. Now I've lost my place. Let's see. Oh, yeah. His desire for us is to obey. It's so simple. When we obey, it brings him glory. Isn't that incredible? It's so easy. But we tend not to want to do that all the time. You know, let's say that you've raised a boy, and he's a good kid, right? And he's done the right thing most of his life. He's been pretty cooperative at home. He's helped around the house. Now he's a teenager. He's got a part-time job. He gets good grades in school. He's in sports. He does all the stuff, right? And he's a good kid. And he comes to you one day and he says, "Dad, I'd really like some really hot car." And he describes it, right? And of course the dad thinks, well, yeah, that'd be a lot of fun, and he'd kind of like to ride in it too. But then he starts thinking, and he has this talk with his son. I see why you want this car, and I know it would be a lot of fun, but if you speed in it, you can get some bad tickets, and your insurance is going to go up. And even worse yet, if you're hot rodding around and you get in a wreck, you could really get hurt. Or even worse yet, you could hurt somebody else. In fact, you could even die. And so all of this reasoning is going on. He wants to give the kid the car. The father really wants to do this, right? But on the other hand, he sees that the freedom of choice he's going to have in that car could be disastrous if he makes the wrong choices. And that is exactly what God does with us. He trusts us with choice. It's the most powerful thing in the world, and God gives it to every one of us. And we can choose to obey or disobey. It's all our choice. But he knows that the consequences aren't going to be good if we disobey. So it's a pretty amazing power that the Lord has given us. But you can see he probably gives it like any good dad, with fear and trepidation. You know, don't make the wrong choice.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Okay, so when we go outside of God's instructions, we're taking the risks, and we all know that. So Ephesians 2:19 through 22 says, "So then, you are no longer strangers and aliens, but you are fellow citizens with the saints and are of God's household, having been built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, Jesus Christ himself being the cornerstone, in whom the whole building being fitted together is growing into a holy temple in the Lord, in whom you also are being built together into a dwelling of the Spirit of God." So is there a temple on the earth today? Yeah, we're looking at it. It's the person you're sitting to. It's the one you're sitting in. We're part of that temple that has to be the place where the glory of God is shown. It's amazing that he trusts us with this, right? And Ephesians 4:22 through 24 says, "You were taught with regard to your former way of life to put off your old self, which is being corrupted by its deceitful desires, to be made new in the attitude of your minds, and to put on the new self, created to be like God in true righteousness and holiness." And so we see that those commandments, when we obey them, we bring glory to God. It's a simple, simple thing. And 2 Corinthians 3:7 and 8 says, "Now, if the ministry that brought death, which was engraved in letters on stone, the 10 Commandments, came with the glory," or kavod, "so that the Israelites could not look steadily at the face of Moses because of its glory already fading away, will not the ministry of the Spirit be even more glorious?" So as glorious as the glory of God was in that temple, and the heavy weight of it was there, so that even the priests couldn't go in, even Moses couldn't go in, we have a greater glory in this day and age, in this room. And so I just thought, you know, what more could we ask? We could change the world if we really put our minds to it. This group right here, just go out and be the glory of God in the world and draw people into this net, right? Draw them in so that they can get pulled out and saved. That's what we have to do. And so now we're going back to the wilderness with the children of Israel, and the tabernacle has been erected. The glory of God is in their midst, and it's so heavy Moses can't go in. The last time God was on the top of the mountain was the last time they'd seen the glory. And they trembled, as Exodus 20:18-19 tells us. When all the people witnessed the thunder and lightning, the sounding of the ram's horn, and the mountain enveloped in smoke, they trembled and stood at a distance. That's a nice way to say they ran for the hills. "Speak to us for yourself, and we will listen," they said to Moses. "But do not let God speak to us, or we will die." Do you hear the terror in those words? We're going to die if you make him speak to us. Don't let him talk to us. That's the terror they felt Okay, we have to see that. People had seen that at a distance, right? Way up on top of that mountain. Now it's right here next to them. What are they going to do? And now Exodus 40:35, and Moses was not able to enter the tabernacle of meeting because the cloud rested above it and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. So now we get to the book of Leviticus. And this is, for me, it will never be the same. Leviticus 1:1 says, "Now the Lord called to Moses and spoke to him from the tabernacle of meeting, saying," all right, how many ways did God speak in that first verse? Can you find them all? There's 3 ways. Can you find them? He found them. Here's a hint. He called, he spoke, saying. Okay, now we just read over that and we go, that's nice. Okay, so now what? Okay, let's look at the Hebrew and see, so now what? And I think you're going to think this is pretty cool. So here's the word for "and he called," Vayikra. What's different about that word? Can you see it from your seats? This one? Is this the different? It's this little tiny olive. Why is that olive so little? Well, there's more than one reason. But we're going to look at that. We're going to say, whenever you see a Hebrew letter that's a different size than the other letters, stop and say, why is that written that way? Because it's going to tell you something huge about what's being said. In this case, Moses didn't want God to call him this word, Vayikra, which I'm going to tell you in a minute why. Because yakar, which is this word, Vayikar, means precious. So right in the middle of Vayikra, the word is precious. And God wanted to call him precious. So it's only, you only know that God is doing it because that aleph is there. And when the aleph is there, it means that God is in your life. And when God is in your life, you have purpose. That's the whole thing. And so Moses is a precious man to God. He's loved by God, and he's part of Moses' life so much that Moses' whole purpose in life revolves around God. And that's what we want to have said about us. And I've really strayed way far from my notes, and now I'm going to have to find out where I am. But I'll figure it out here. Okay, so because remember it was said that Moses was the most humble man on the earth. That's why the rabbis say Moses said, don't call me that. How can you call me precious? You know me. But God said, Vayikra, in the first word of Leviticus. Now, not only is this the first word in Leviticus, but it's the name of the whole book. It's called Vayikra. That's the Hebrew word for Leviticus. So this whole book is about you are precious to God. That's what it's about. We think it's about blood and sacrifices and all those things that we have a hard time relating to. No, it's about the fact that you are precious to God, and He wants you to come near to Him. Pretty incredible stuff. Isaiah 43:1 says, "Do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have Vayikra you." But really it says karati, but that means I have called you, but it's this word right here with a different pronoun. You by name. He's called you by name. You are mine. That's the preciousness that he is saying in Leviticus. He's repeating it in Isaiah with the same exact word. You are his. So amazingly, it's not the only time that God used this word to call Moses. Exodus 3:4 says, when the Lord saw that he had gone over to look, God, Vayikra, called to him from within the bush, Moses, Moses. And Moses said, here I am. So that was the same word. Again, he was saying, you're precious to me, this burning bush, that he couldn't figure out what in the world was going on. And God again used that name. So, as I mentioned, this word is extremely important. So this is a book about the purity of God and how his people can approach him. And they can approach him because of the grace that he's using in this word. You are precious to me. Vayikra. All right? So, without the aleph, let's look at what happens to that word. In Numbers 23:4, it says, and God met Vayikra. Who did he meet? He met Balaam. And Balaam said to him, I have arranged the 7 altars, and I have offered on each altar a bull and a ram. Do you think that mattered to God? It didn't matter one bit. There's no aleph here when God met Balaam, and there's a real huge reason for it. Balaam, history is cyclical, right? Here's Balaam in the book of Numbers, and we know he was not a good guy, because he was teaming up with Balak to be paid to curse Israel, right? So he shows up again in the book of Revelation, and let's see what it says about him. Revelation 2:14. But I have a few things against you, because you have there those that hold the doctrine of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols, and to commit fornication. So even though God met him, he went and did his own thing. So God can meet us, but we have to decide, like that kid with the hot car, if he's going to speed or not when he thinks nobody's looking, right? Balaam decided to do his own thing, and look where it got him. Look at the recognition it got him in the book of Revelation. Now we're being warned, don't be like Balaam. Yes, I met Balaam, but unfortunately, Balaam decided to do the wrong thing. So Leviticus 1:1, now the Lord called Vayikra to Moses and spoke to him from the tabernacle. So this word, daber, means that what God is saying is actually has the essence of being tangible. His words, you can almost feel them. They're so powerful when he says Vayikra. And then the next thing, the essence of his words are almost tangible. You can reach out and touch it. So that's an incredible word. Now, the last word that we're going to look at here is the word and saying, Vayomer, and saying to Moses. Do you know that Vayomer is the word that God used in creation? So every single time God went to create, he said, and God said, Vayomer, let there be light. That was the word he used. So do we see the power in the love when he calls you precious? It's like you can tangibly touch it, and it's the power that he used in the words to create everything that we have seen. This is huge. And so, you know, the first verse in Leviticus, we see the power of the Word of God and his amazing love for us. So when we pray the Word of God, that power is going out. That's why when we pray, we need to use the Word of God. Pray with your Bible open. pray right out of your Bible, because those words, that's why he said, they are never going to return to you void. How can they? They're the tangible power of God. They're that essence of tangible power. So it's incredible. Now there's one more thing that we have to look at in this verse. The first time in this verse, this word is used for God. It's the Yud He Vav He. For it says, the Lord spoke, or the Lord called. What's this name represent? Grace. The Yud He Vav He is always connected with grace. So God's name is always associated with the sacrifices. The name of grace and sacrifices will never be taken apart. It's together, just like this. You cannot take it apart. So I just found that mind-blowing, because sacrifice is associated with his grace. And as we move again, we're going to see that sacrifice and love cannot be separated either. So sacrifice and grace. Hebrews 10:5 says, therefore, when he came into the world, he said, sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but a body you have prepared for me. So for us to bring a lamb or a bull or a pigeon, that's fine. But he wants us. He wants all of us. And that's the whole reason for the sacrifices. So Isaiah 6:3 tells us that the angels even use this word, Vayikra, when they called out to one another about God. Listen to this. And they were calling Vayikra to one another, saying, holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The earth is full of his glory. The whole earth cries out that this is the God of glory. His Spirit in our lives brings that glory to the earth and proclaims his holiness through our obedience and the love that we show to one another. That's how the glory of the Lord is displayed now. So Moses heard God's voice through this little aleph, and we hear it through the Holy Spirit that lives in us. John 16:13 says, when the Spirit of truth comes, he will guide you into all truth. For he will not speak on his own authority, but whatever he hears, he will speak, and he will declare to you the things that are to come. How many of us want to know what's next, what to do? Oh my gosh, we're living in a world that's coming unglued, right? We hear the headlines, we read what's going on, we know the financial markets are in trouble, we know everything's in flux, we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, but this tells us he's going to declare to you the things that are to come. So when he wants us to know what's next, he's going to tell us. If we're in tune, he'll tell us exactly. And he'll tell us what to do. So Leviticus 1:2 says, speak, daber, to the children of Israel and say to them, when a man brings an offering, and the Hebrew word for offering is korban, to the Lord. So korban, I'm going to turn the page here. That's the word for korban, and this is the root of the word korban, and the root means to draw near. So when a man brings a korban, so this word is so often translated as sacrifice, but it's not sacrifice. It's a drawing near. It's a way to draw near to God in the time of the tabernacle, and even in our time, as we will see. So you're going to draw close or draw near by bringing this offering. And how do we remember this in times past? Do we remember that Esther What did she bring to the king and to Haman to get in their presence? She brought a banquet, right? That drew them in, right? She brought something that would draw them near so she could get into their presence. The wise men brought gifts, remember? And they came, and those gifts came into the presence of the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. It was through gifts that they came near. So now God is telling his people, bring a gift and draw close to me. And he's empowering them and showing them how to enter his presence. Remember, they were terrified of his presence. So this is what he's doing. He's not saying, make a sacrifice, I want blood. No, he's saying, don't worry, you guys. Vayikra, I'm calling you precious ones, and just bring an offering to me, and that's how you enter my presence. It's a beautiful thing. It's not a scolding thing. And so these offerings that they were making were intended to be enjoyed as part of a communal meal. Now, not the olah, which we're going to see in a minute, or it was to give sustenance to the priests. A portion of the korban was a symbol of God's portion. So the remainder was eaten by the one who brought it and his guests, okay? So it was a way of coming into fellowship. It was a beautiful thing. So this created a sense of communion between the people and God. So they could see, hey, I'm going to bring a sacrifice tonight. Join me. And they were coming into the presence of God because God had called them precious. And he said, this is how you come into my presence. Come and eat. Come on, let's join in fellowship together. That's what was happening in the book of Leviticus. Not some angry God saying, bring me a sacrifice. Okay, so we need to change that way of thinking. What's the goal of being drawn close to God? What do we expect to happen if we're drawn close to God? I'm hearing?
Worship and maturity.
Worship, maturity, yeah, I think so. I think it's also a way of showing our dependence on him. And we realize that love and sacrifice can't be separated, okay? Galatians 2:20, I have been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. So how do you see the love and sacrifice combined here? You can't separate it. Whenever there's love, there's going to be a sacrifice. If there's a sacrifice, there's going to be love, right? How do you love somebody without sacrificing something? I don't think it's possible. You're going to sacrifice part of yourself. You're going to sacrifice getting your way all the time. You're going to sacrifice something if there's love in a relationship. It's just the way it is. So Romans 8:29 says, for whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed into the image of his Son. So when you're conformed, you're changing, right? And when you're changing, it hurts, right? How many have ever exercised because they wanted to lose 10 pounds or something? And you work and you do your, whatever, jumping jacks, whatever you do. And the next day after you've exercised, you're so sore you can hardly move, right? Because you're trying to conform your body into a new shape. And that conforming hurts. Well, it hurts when it's internal also, doesn't it? It hurts when we have to give up our way. It hurts when we have to recognize that we're not in control of this world. God is. It's a hard thing sometimes, but he's partnering with us, or he wants to. So coming close to God, we do that so we can be conformed into his image and go out into the world changed, right? But it'll hurt, it'll cost us something. That's the bottom line. So the korban is the gift that brings the fellowship, and what happens to the gift is how it is to be sacrificed. So Leviticus 1:3 says, if his offering is a burnt sacrifice of the herd, let him offer a male without blemish. He shall offer it of his own free will at the door of the tabernacle of meeting before the Lord. And so this is the first offering mentioned, and it's the olah offering. Olah is the word in Hebrew that means to go up. And so it's the perfect name for this because the whole offering goes up in smoke to the Lord. That's it. There's nobody gets to eat, but there's just this lovely aroma that goes up to the Lord. And so that's the olah offering. It is an offering for atonement for the giver, and it is a sin offering. In Leviticus 1:4, then we're told that he shall put his hand on the head of the burnt offering, and it will be accepted on his behalf to make atonement for him. So this atonement is going to come with the placing on of hands onto this bull or sheep or goat or pigeon or whatever it is, so that the sin of the person is transferred metaphorically to that animal, and then it is sacrificed. So Romans 12:1 says, Paul urges us to present our bodies as a living and holy sacrifice acceptable to God. There you go. So it's, whatever we give up is a sacrifice. Love is a sacrifice. So we're being urged to set aside our wills when they're being stubborn, our flesh that screams to have its own way, our egos to submit to God's commandments. But every time we do it, we are doing it for the sake of heaven. That makes it easier, right? If you know there's a purpose for it. Yes, there is. He's conforming us, and we're doing it because we love him. And so it's an amazing exchange. It really is when you see it happening. 1 Samuel 15:22 says, has the Lord as much delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed than the fat of rams. So now I want to take a look at Leviticus 4. We're jumping ahead, but we'll go back and we'll visit all these offerings because they're in the book. So Leviticus 4, 3 through 12, 14 through 21, 22 through 26, because these specific sacrifices address leaders. Okay? Now, leaders is every single one of us in this room. Because at some point in some time, you're going to lead somebody else. Maybe you're a mom or a dad. You lead a family, right? Or maybe you're a neighbor. You might need to lead that neighbor sometimes. Maybe you'll need to help them. Maybe you'll lead them to the Lord. But you're going to be a leader of some kind, some way, in some circumstances. So what is the attitude of a leader supposed to be? So we begin. Now the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Israel, saying, if a person sins unintentionally against any of the commandments of the Lord in anything which ought not to be done, and does any of them. So this is a person. But like I said, every person's going to be a leader at some point. Everybody. And then we go on. Verse 3, if the anointed priest, this is the high priest, sins, bringing guilt on the people, then let him offer to the Lord for his sin, which he has sinned, a young bull without blemish as a sin offering. And then now, if the whole congregation, and that's the great Sanhedrin, or the Supreme Court of Israel, sins unintentionally, and then when a ruler, and that speaks to whoever is leading, has sinned and done something unintentionally against any of the commandments of the Lord his God in anything which should not be done and is guilty. So first, we want to recognize that these korban, what are they? The offerings that bring us into his presence, are for unintentional sin. okay? There is no offering for sin done intentionally. Okay, so an unintentional sin may be like, okay, my speedometer's broken, but I got to go to the grocery store, and so I'm driving my car anyway. I haven't had time to get it fixed, whatever. So you're driving to the grocery store, pretty soon you see a red light in your rear view mirror. Oh shoot, you pull over. The police officer says, do you know that you were going 20 miles over the speed limit? And you say, oh my goodness, I had no idea. My speedometer's broken, I couldn't tell. Well, your sad story is a sad story, but the police officer says, so sad, too bad, you're getting a ticket. You need to get that speedometer fixed, right? So it's a consequence that will help you go do what you're supposed to do, right? So these unintentional sins and the offerings to bring you near to God are something to get in your mind that, oh, I'm not going to do that again. I'm going to be cognizant of this next time before I do it, instead of after I do it. So that's the reason for these unintentional sin offerings. But unintentional sins means that you missed the mark, okay? But at least you were shooting at the mark. Okay, if you have an intentional sin, it means you weren't even shooting at the target, and you knew it, okay? It means not only did you miss the mark, but now it can't be atoned for, period. It means that you yielded to temptation or a moment of rebelliousness. We've all done it, okay? Your conscience knows when this happens immediately. Because inwardly, our conscience is the voice of God that speaks to our heart. And boom, he's right there, isn't he? Why did you do that? You knew you shouldn't have done that. And we know immediately when we've done an intentional sin. So it is said that, listen to these words, sin committed intentionally upsets the moral balance of the world. Sin committed intentionally upsets the moral balance of the world. Do you wonder why the world's in the state it's in? Think about those words. And think about it. In reality, it does. Because now everything that sin, it's like an echo. It just goes out, and it's like dominoes that fall. There are consequences not to you, but to everybody, right? And so now all those dominoes have to be put back in order, stood upright again. It's a big deal. Intentional sin upsets the moral balance of the world. And that's what happened to Adam and Eve. They upset the moral balance of the world. After they sinned, they felt shame and they tried to hide. But the intentional sin was already done. And so what is it? Intentional sin requires repentance, teshuvah, turn around and go the other way. Remorse, we feel sorry about it. We really are. There's a confession and a resolution not to do it again. And so that's intentional sin. But the sin offering here is just the offering for carelessness to help people remember not to do it again. So when a sin offering was brought to the Lord, we are told 3 times, and I love this, Leviticus 1:9, 13b, and 17c, if the sin offering is a bull, he shall wash its entrails and its legs with water, and the priest shall burn all on the altar as a burnt sacrifice, an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma to the Lord. 13b, if the offering is a lamb or a goat, it is a burnt sacrifice, an offering made by fire, a sweet aroma to the Lord. And if the offering is a bird, it is a burnt sacrifice, an offering made by fire, a what? Sweet aroma to the Lord. Why do we care if it's a sweet aroma to the Lord? Do you know how the bride is going to be identified? By the aroma, the fragrance that she puts off. That's how he's going to know if you're the bride, if you're part of the bride. Isn't that incredible? knocks me out. And so what do we see? When does the sweet aroma go up? When there's a sacrifice made, right? So all the mitzvot that we do are the things that create our wedding dress, we're told, right? Well, they also create our fragrance. So every opportunity that we get to do a mitzvot, we should grab it, because that's going to be a sweet aroma to the Lord, because it'll take some kind of sacrifice, and sacrifice means love. And so I just thought, wow, Lord, you are so amazing. That repeats over and over, but it refers not just to the sacrifice, but to the bride that's being created with the sacrifice. So now the children of the Lord, who were terrified of the presence of the Lord on Mount Sinai, have instructions about how to approach this holy God that is, his glory is literally heavy. He's the God of grace and glory who is in their midst. So now they begin to know this all-powerful God as a God of grace and forgiveness, who wants to be drawn into fellowship with them. It's not just us that wants to be drawn into fellowship with God. He wants our fellowship. And so it's a book about purity. And it is said that Leviticus is the very first book that is ever taught to Jewish children, because you teach the purest book to the purest among us, and it's the children. And so Ephesians 5:2 says, "And walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God." Wow. We never do anything for him that he didn't do for us first. So that is the beginning of the book of Leviticus. And I hope you never see it the same. It's an amazing book.